Marvel themselves are coming after him.
I was probably the worst stunt guy to ever work in Hong Kong, but I do feel proud that I got to do it. I was like 19 years old and 135 pounds soaking wet. But it just so happened that that movie had a Russian mafia gang and they needed loads of white guys that could do at least a certain amount of action.
Even today, he carries that Hong Kong mentality. Okay, double him out. If the stunt double cannot do it, double the double.
I think Die Hard is one of the best action movies ever made. It's near perfect. The hand-to-hand fights are shit. In 1987, Sammo Hung made a movie called Eastern Condors. Why is it the fights in Eastern Condors are so much better? When I worked with David Bautista, we were going to have a fire stunt in the movie. Dave said, "Oh, I don't like that fire, but you were on Fire Inspector." He said, "Nah, fuck that, that was Rob." And he was happy to give credit to Rob because Dave is not insecure in his masculinity or in his toughness.
Dave's a proper man.
Exactly. When The Punisher came along, I felt something inside that I meant to do this. In Cantonese, there's a proverb, "Mo gao le lo dao dim deal." Don't teach your father how to fuck.
That's a very good piece of advice. They say that in the world of action, there are those who follow the script and those who redefine the language of movement. Today's guest didn't just learn how to fight on screen. He survived the most grueling baptism of fire in cinematic history. At just 18 years old, this man left for the neon-soaked streets of Hong Kong, entering a world where safety was a luxury and precision was the only way to survive. He didn't just watch the legends, he traded blows with them. Jackie Chan in The Medallion, Jet Li in the 1998 film The Hitman. He has also worked on set with Sammo Hung in the film Knockoff. He earned his stripes the hard way, becoming one of the rare Westerners to ever be etched onto the prestigious Hong Kong Stuntman Association register. But he didn't just stay in the East. He brought that lethal, heroic bloodshed DNA back to the UK, merging Eastern grit with Western storytelling to create a style that is as beautiful as it is brutal. If you've winced at the hyper-realistic carnage in Gareth Evans' Gangs of London, then you've seen his handiwork. If you've felt the visceral, bone-crunching weight of Gareth Evans' Apostle, that was Jude Poyer. He is a long-time collaborator of the visionary director Gareth Evans, director of The Raid, and the man trusted with orchestrating the chaos in the Netflix epic Havoc starring Tom Hardy. There is another film coming soon, also action designed by Jude and directed by Gareth Evans. It's a Japanese gangster flick called A Cult Is My Passport. And now Mr. Poyer has stepped into the Marvel Cinematic Universe to oversee the return of the most uncompromising and one of my favorite anti-heroes in comic book history. He is the action designer and stunt coordinator behind the highly anticipated Punisher special, working alongside Jon Bernthal to ensure that Frank Castle's brand of justice is more visceral than ever before. From the rooftops of Kowloon to the heights of the MCU, he is the invisible architect behind the world's most iconic action sequences. Marvel themselves are coming after him. Jude Poyer, welcome to the show, sir. It goes without saying it's a bloody big honor.
Thank you very much, Troy, and the honor is mine. I've really been enjoying watching what you're doing with this channel.
Great, fantastic. Really big honor to have you. So before we get stuck into things, can you tell us what helped forge Jude Poyer in his younger years and what makes a man become an action director or a stunt registered man in Hong Kong?
Damn luck, lack of direction, and being exposed to movies from like a very, very young age. You know, I grew up as part of that VHS generation, so you didn't have to necessarily go to the cinema to discover movies. It was watching Star Wars, Jaws, Indiana Jones, the Bond movies on VHS tape as a very small kid. And then when I was around 8 years old, seeing my first martial arts movie, and then it was like light bulb. I really liked this. That was a ninja movie. Started studying martial arts, also consuming whatever martial art films I could get my hands on. Started with Bruce Lee, extended to Jackie Chan, and then I discovered more of Hong Kong cinema. People like Yuen Biao, Jet Li, Sammo Hung, directors like John Woo, Ringo Lam, Choi Hak. So yeah, that gave me an appetite for Hong Kong cinema, and I also enjoyed performing, so I wanted to do that as a career. I'm trying to give you a very condensed version because I don't want to send people to sleep. So when I was 18 years old...
So when did you start martial arts? What age?
I was 8 years old. I started with Shotokan karate because back then that was what was available. And I think it's a great style to start with in terms of building a good foundation for learning different techniques and stances and transitions through movements.
Great. And what did you evolve into after Shotokan?
Well, I did a little bit of judo at school because one of the PE teachers was a judo black belt and a karate brown belt, so he taught us a little bit. He was also a big movie buff, so sometimes on like a rainy afternoon he'd put movies on. It's very lucky, like you're like 9 years old, 10 years old at school, and he's putting on The Young Master for all of us to watch. Or Police Story. He did me, his name was Martin Summers. He did one of the biggest favours for me. He said to me, oh, do you know Jackie Chan's going to be on the TV tonight? And the British film critic and TV presenter Jonathan Ross was doing a 45-minute special where he went out to Hong Kong and profiled Jackie Chan. Now, today in this internet culture and with thousands of channels, that doesn't seem like a big deal. But back in the UK, when we had 4 channels, you didn't get Jackie Chan on TV. The teacher kindly taped that show for me, and when I took it home and watched it, it was just like, no. I'd already seen Jackie Chan. I'd already read lots about Jackie Chan in the martial art magazines. But this show didn't focus so much on the martial art aspect. It really highlighted the Hong Kong stunt work. So I think that was when a big seed was planted in my head about the stunts of Hong Kong, and also how the action in Hong Kong was so different to what was being created in the Western, the American movies and the British things I was seeing.
That's your younger influence in the martial arts, and then you start to get influenced by film, like many of us have in this industry. But then because I know when I decided, okay, that's it, I'm just going to China, it's tough, man. You have to cut off everything, right, to just leave and go to Asia or go to another country, and you leave your Western climate, and it's like you have a blanket of security in the West, growing up as a Westerner. So to leave that is tough. For you, what was the catalyst? Like, there must have been a cutoff point where you're like, I'm done, I gotta go. What was it?
I don't know if it was that dramatic for me, because as a child my parents moved about and lived in different countries due to my dad's job. So I was already used to traveling. I enjoyed different warmer climates, eating different kind of foods, meeting people from different cultures. I didn't see the world as this small place of the UK, and of course the UK, it's an island. A lot of people can have that island mentality, but I enjoyed travel. And then also I went when I was 18 years old, so I had nothing to lose. It wasn't like I had a partner and kids or a mortgage to take care of. It's like, you're 18, you've just finished school, give it a go. If it doesn't work out, what harm? No harm done. You come home and then you carry on, maybe on a more what's the right word, sort of traditional or orthodox path. Go to film school or go to drama school or get a job. So for me, indeed, Hong Kong seemed like, at that time, the industry in Hong Kong was not at its strongest, but it wasn't at its weakest. They were still making a lot of movies, and in my naive, slightly arrogant 18-year-old head, I thought, well, I could spend 2-3 years in a film school or a college learning, or I could try to get practical experience on set with the best people in the world teaching me, and maybe get paid at the same time.
Yeah, good, fantastic. So for you, it was a comfortable experience then to travel abroad, yeah?
Yeah, of course, it's anytime you're 18 years old, you leave home and, that security, it's not like, oh, I've got this. But I just guess I had a sense of adventure, and also I had that arrogance of youth, where sometimes you're not aware of the things that could go wrong or the risks you're exposing yourself to. I wasn't aware of the level of competition out there, or how much better the Hong Kong stunt performers and the martial art actors were than me, because I was young and dumb and a bit arrogant.
Yeah. So when you got there, was it very competitive? When you entered, were there a lot of other foreigners there already, and how did you compete with them?
There were quite a few. I think when I arrived, the Jet Li movie Black Mask was in production, and a lot of the Western martial art movie people were already working on that, so I didn't have a chance to audition for it. I'm not saying I would have got the job, but what I found was at that time there were certain people who had been in Hong Kong for a number of years who had appeared in a lot of movies. People like Master Mark Houghton, Kim Marie Penn, and then you had people like Mike Lambert that had been there for a couple of years but were doing really, really well in the industry. And then also you had people who weren't in Hong Kong specifically to do movies but were martial artists that saw it as a fun thing to do or a way to make extra money, models, bodybuilders, security people that could fight. In Hong Kong there's no union and there's not a lot of gatekeeping, or at least there wasn't back then. So it wasn't uncommon for there to be like an open casting call saying, okay, we need Westerners that can fight. Go to such and such studio at 2:00 on Tuesday. And then you get put through your paces and there may be a good chance you get hired. I remember when I got the call to audition for Knockoff, I was told it's a Jean-Claude Van Damme film. And in my head I thought, well, I don't have a chance because normally the people in the Jean-Claude Van Damme movies are tall and very muscular. And I was like 19 years old and 135 pounds soaking wet. But it just so happened that that movie had a Russian mafia gang and they needed loads of white guys that could do at least a certain amount of action. So some really good people got bigger parts like Mark Houghton, Mike Miller, who's an Australian, a very good kicker. He'd been working in the industry for a long time, and I managed to get work as one of the Russian mafia dudes on that. And for me it was like surreal because of course I loved Hong Kong cinema, but I was a white kid doing martial arts in the late 80s and early 90s. So, you know, Jean-Claude Van Damme, it's the splits, it's the high kicks. So I was a Van Damme fan, but also Choi Huk is the director. I'd loved his movies like Chinese Ghost Story and Once Upon a Time in China. And then Sammo Hung is the second unit director. You know, he's directing the action sequences. And then
yeah, you're right in the center.
Yeah, and stunt people that I recognized from Hong Kong films or I knew by name, like Mars from JC Team, or Benny Lai, who the name might not mean much to everybody watching this, but if you've seen Police Story 2, he plays the deaf guy with the crazy kicks. He was on there working as a stunt double for Rob Schneider and part of the utility team. So for me it was like I'd done a little bit of work before Knockoff, but on Knockoff I was like, okay, I'm in the Hong Kong action industry right now.
Yeah, you made it. You're in the deep end now. So you've been in the industry for decades, working at the highest level. But when you first entered the movie world, what did you think the movie world was, and what did you quickly realize that it actually was?
I don't know what the movie world is. I mean, it's evolving and it's different in different areas and different to different people. I think I had this, I've said this before, I had this arrogance because I used to watch a lot of Hong Kong movies when I was a teenager in London. And I would see people like Mark Houghton, Jeff Falcon, Steve Tartaglia, Richard Norton, Cynthia Rothrock. I'd see these Western people in the movies doing really great action sequences and seemingly working a lot and making a good living. But I would also see Western people in those movies who were not very good at all. They couldn't act and their fighting was pretty poor. In my head, I don't need to be the best, and I don't try to be the best. I try to be the best version of me. So I kind of think as long as I'm not the worst, I'll give it a go. You know, it could be fun, or maybe there's a chance. So I didn't realize that those Western people that were in those movies, the ones that weren't very good, it was like a different class of movie or a different class of casting, and they were probably tourists that were just backpacking through Hong Kong, and production was like, we need a couple of African American looking guys and a couple of white guys to play gangsters. And they probably turned up on the day, got paid in cash, did the best they could do, and went on to the Philippines or Thailand or wherever else they were going. I didn't realize those people were career stunt actors. It was probably good I didn't know that. I thought, well, I'm white and I can do the splits and I can kick. I can work, you know. The reality is the standard of the Hong Kong stunt performers, not just in terms of performing body stunts, but also performing fight choreography, is just, or was, on just another level. They are like, I don't know what to compare them to, but it's like world-class athletes.
Yeah.
And really, you know, I think I was probably too young to have imposter syndrome, but when I think about it now, I'm like, I was probably the worst stunt guy to ever work in Hong Kong. But I do feel proud that I got to do it.
That's too humble, man.
No,
Okay.
it's true.
Well, I can tell you that there are a lot of people that would like to try, and I can tell you firsthand, yes, they don't make the cut. Even today, they're coming, they try, and they don't make the cut, man. So you're there and you battled it out, and you fought with some of the world's most legendary movie martial artists of all time. So
I don't want to derail the conversation, and maybe this is something we're going to get into, but you just made me think. I work with some graded stunt performers, here in the UK or in other countries, and sometimes I think they would not last a day on a Hong Kong movie set, because after a few attempts it would just be like, replace that person or double that person.
Yeah.
I think, that Hong Kong standard was very, very high.
I just spoke about this with Guanghua yesterday, actually. He's doing it all the time. Even today, he carries that Hong Kong mentality. Okay, double him out, quick. Like, double the double. If the stunt double cannot do it, double the double. Get him out. Yeah. So there's a lot of mythology around action work. What do people get completely wrong about this trade or this part of the industry?
I haven't thought about that. I guess because I look at it as an insider, I don't know what people on the outside think. I know a lot of martial artists who haven't maybe been exposed to movie fighting. A lot of martial artists think that they can adapt to screen fighting very easily. And often that's not the case. Sometimes it's because of their arrogance and closed-mindedness, but other times it's actually about their techniques. If you're a boxer, you're used to hiding your punch. If you're a professional fighter, maybe a very good professional fighter, you don't show when it hurts. I mean, if you watch like the One Championship, sometimes they have the Thais in there, and I love watching the Thais fight.
Yeah.
And they get shots that must hurt, and they just stay either stoic or they smile. Well, if you take somebody like that and you say, okay, you're the hero in this fight, but when the bad guy punches you in the stomach, we need to feel that it hurts. That can be alien to them. So a lot of real fighters need to sort of deprogram themselves from what they would normally do in a fight situation, and also just be very mindful of the camera. And I'm sure you've seen it. High-level martial artists sometimes just don't translate very well to the screen.
Yeah.
And sometimes,
all the time.
I can say this for sure, I would often rather work with an actor who's done no martial arts but has a good foundation in dance, rather than someone with a martial art background, because with a dancer, I know that they are used to choreography, they know how to emote and sell emotion through and tell a story with their body, and also they understand the aesthetic side. So
indeed, yeah.
That's something I've noticed. Dancers can make very good fight performers, and while we're here, a lot of the best Hong Kong stunt people weren't fighters. I mean, there were fighters and martial artists among them, but the majority of the people from Jackie's team, Sammo's team, in the 80s, they came from a Beijing opera, or some of them are Cantonese opera performers. Now, martial arts played a part of the curriculum, but it wasn't really to learn how to fight. It was about beautiful movement and rhythm.
Yeah, absolutely, man. What separates someone who lasts long in the industry from someone who burns out quickly?
I don't know if I can answer that question, but I can probably answer something related to that. I meet stunt people who get into the business for a variety of reasons. If you're like me, it's somebody that grew up loving cinema and was captivated by movies and wanted to be part of that process, and also had some kind of physical or action side to them. I find those people are often the ones that stay the course, because it really is not just a career, it's a vocation, it's a calling. When you're doing it, you feel, this is where I belong, this is what I should be doing. There are other people that get into it because perhaps they're a high-level competitive sports person and they're reaching the end of their career. Maybe it's a very short career. Once you reach 30, you can't carry on performing at that level, but you can transfer those skills into stunts. There's definitely a place for those people, or professional acrobats, professional dancers, and then it's interesting to see whether the industry is something they fall in love with, whether the craft is something they fall in love with, or if it is just a job. I think if it is just a job, unless you're very fortunate, it might be harder, because sometimes you won't get hired and it won't be about you. It's nothing personal. It's just a reality of the ebbs and flows of the industry, where productions are being made, what kind of performer is in demand, whether it's based on height, racial background, gender, all these things. I think the ones that stay the course are either people that love the craft of filmmaking, or they can't do anything else. I mean, I think that's part of the reason why I'm still in this industry, is because I finished school at 18 and I didn't get any more qualifications. I've done other part-time jobs early in my stunt career to pay the bills, but in reality, I don't know how to do anything else. This is what I've been doing for decades now.
Oh, roger that. So again, that's a very humble answer that you're giving there. I think there would be so many different things you could do, man. To be a coordinator, you have to be a master of management. So that in itself is already a fantastic skill. It's a good answer. I think what I took away from what you just said is I heard the word love quite a lot. They just have to love what they're doing. I think if you really genuinely love it, you're going to make it for the long haul.
If I see somebody who's interested in stunts or has potential to be a good stunt performer, I will try and engage with them and encourage with them. Obviously, I'd never push it on them. And I find that obviously they have to have the physical performer potential, but mentally it's the ones that go, oh, this is something different, but this could be a new love for me. Maybe they've gone from serving in the military. They may have been a career soldier or in the special forces, and they've decided that chapter now has closed. Where is something else where I can put the skills I learned in the military to use, along with learning new skills? Because in the military, you learn to work as part of a team. You learn how to work under pressure. You need to know how to delegate, take responsibility. And obviously there are physical and practical skills, whether it's with vehicles or weapons or with ropes. So I think it's people that don't look at it as being just a straightforward transition, but okay, this could be an interesting new chapter and equally as engaging.
There has to be some intrinsic interest, yeah? When we spoke last week, you were quite passionate about the differences between the action actor, the stunt performer, the classification of what is an actor, an action actor, stuntman or stunt performer, or just a performer, whatever you want to label it. What's more valuable to you when you hire someone? Is it mentality, skill set, or responsibility?
Personality goes a long way. Now, obviously, I'm not going to hire somebody that can't do the job. They've got to be physically capable of doing whatever the action requires and do it safely. And so competency is important. But if they're not a nice person to be around and you're going to be on location with them for a month, I might go with somebody else who's not quite as good. Because the way I look at it is what was I doing in 2017? Oh, it was that film. I realized I measure the units of time of my life according to what projects I was on. And when you think about your life in terms of units and projects, then you go, do I really want to spend those units with somebody who's all in their ego, or somebody who's toxic, or someone who's just not going to be nice to work with? Easy to work with is a big thing. And obviously talent is important, but being easy to work with is really, I think that's underestimated. It's a bit like, people say, I'm not agreeing with this. If you grow up really good looking, you don't have to learn how to develop a personality. And you do meet some people that are shit hot at performing, and they think they don't then need to be able to know how to talk to people and how to be polite. And if you're on a movie or a series for months, maybe you're on a foreign location, your stunt coordinator is not going to love you if you're rude to the hair and makeup team every day, or you give the costume department a hard time.
Yeah, because it's going to come back to you and cause you trouble, yeah?
Yeah. We talked about this in the previous conversation, but related to your question, I don't think there has to be like a hard division, like you cannot be an actor and a stunt person. You must pick a lane. But I think you need to know what you are doing on each job. I've had people approach me, maybe they know that there's a project coming up and they want to put themselves forward as a stunt performer, but really I know that what they want to be is an action star or an action actor. Yeah. And sometimes you need a stunt performer who's a really good actor. It could be a godsend. In the UK, there's a few people who are trained actors, brilliant actors. And of course, if I can use them, I do, because it's like, I can say to the director, you can trust this person with dialogue. It's not going to be stunt acting. And that way they get to maybe play the role and do action without needing doubling. Gordon Alexander is a perfect case in point. He played an assassin in Gangs of London. It was the role of a hitman, and it was quite a big fight. And when I read the script, I was like, oh, this is going to be a pretty ambitious fight. And I said to Gareth, who are you thinking to cast in that role? And he said, well, the action's really important. I was thinking to hire a stuntman. And I said, I'm going to get you an actor who just happens to be a brilliant stuntman. Because before Gordon became a stuntman who's doubled James Bond, Gordon was a professional actor. And before that, he was on the British Wushu squad. So imagine a stuntman who can act with those martial arts skills coming onto Gangs of London. It just made it possible for us to do a fight sequence where he's swinging an axe, he's using a knife, and doing all this choreography without any doubling and doing it safely.
Yeah, that's great.
there are different lanes, you know.
No, I think that's wonderful. Yeah, he's completely outside the mold. You know, it's sort of in Hollywood, they have this really strong classification. If you're an actor, you're an actor. If you're a stuntman, you're a stuntman. But this guy who's come on to Gangs of London, yeah, he completely breaks the mold.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for Gordon, but I have experienced in the UK, certainly, there still exists a certain amount of gatekeeping within casting and a certain amount of snobbery. So I know professional actors or trained actors that want to be dramatic actors, and they're afraid to do modeling or TV commercials because the legit casting directors won't see them as actors. And
Indeed.
It's like, yeah, but you've got bills to pay, you know. And in the same way, some casting directors will look at someone like Gordon maybe as a stuntman, so he has to have a CV and a showreel purely showing him as the actor that he is. It's interesting, you know, Gordon did a great job on Gangs, and then he had a very featured role in Havoc, again, because he can act and we can trust him to be convincing around Tom Hardy and Timothy Olyphant, but also we can ask him to do action that you can't ask your average actor to do. I worked on a movie a couple of years ago called Header, starring Tessa Thompson. It's not an action movie, it's sort of a drama, psychosexual movie. It's based on the Ibsen play, and they wanted some party guests played by stunt performers so that they're like part of the scenery, and then they get a bit wild and throw people in lakes and stuff. Again, I suggested Gordon. Gordon did a great job. Gordon also covered me for a couple of days when I was on another project. The director of Header, Nia DaCosta, just directed 28 years later, Bone Temple.
Yeah,
Guess
love
who
it.
gets cast in a role in that? Gordon got cast in a role in that. Again, acting and doing
Who
action.
is Gordon playing in that film? Who's Gordon? Which character?
It's quite early in the movie. I think there's a family that are like foraging in a forest, and then some of the infected arrive. Gordon kind of gets left behind by his relatives.
That's Gordon.
And he's running through there going, "What about me?" And we teased Gordon and said that wasn't acting, that was just him being left for the dinner queue. But yeah, that's Gordon.
Left behind. Yeah.
And of course, because obviously Nia knew him as a good actor and as a very competent stunt guy, but also he had to, and you can't see it in the movie, but for a lot of those shots, he's running with like really complicated camera rigs attached to his body and stuff like that. So it's about having the acting chops and the physical chops. But enough about Gordon. You can interview Gordon. We're here to talk about me.
Okay, well, I do have one question for you, which would be specific for someone who wants to follow in the same steps of this gentleman. The question is, if someone wants to be both an actor and a stunt performer, then what is the smartest way to approach that specific goal in their career?
Well, I wanted to be an action actor. That's why when I went to Hong Kong, I wasn't thinking of stunt doubling, and I certainly wasn't thinking about choreography or action design. You know, I was 18 years old. I still had that performing side to me, and I'd done a little bit of amateur acting, and I'd been to acting classes. So I understand that. In Hong Kong, it was okay because there were roles that I could get cast in where maybe I was only going up against 3 other people or 10 other people for the role because they wanted a young white guy that can throw a kick or a young white guy that can speak a bit of Cantonese. But in reality now, the competition is stiff. You know, for one role, they might be seeing 30 people or 100 people might be applying. And also the world is a lot smaller. They will be getting submissions from different continents for those roles. So I would say, be aware of your competition. And if you want to be an action actor, train your acting, work on that craft. Because I don't know if you see this, I see people that market themselves as action actors and they're actually really decent screen fighters, and they think that charisma is enough to get by as an actor. On what I'm going to call more legitimate projects or projects where there's a lot of money on the line, the people who are signing those checks want to believe that emotionally you're going to be able to do the job.
Right.
In the 90s, it seemed like if you had a half-decent physique and you could do the splits, and maybe if you had a foreign accent, you could be a B-movie star in straight-to-video movies. That market has gone. You don't see many of those kind of actors coming up. And I would say the only person who has kind of that career is Scott Adkins. You know, he can star in movies which aren't destined for cinema, but they've got a decent enough budget. Scott is a phenomenal screen performer. He could have been an amazing stuntman if he'd wanted. But Scott hasn't just worked on his kicks and his flips. He works on his acting. And that's why you see him cast in movies like Zero Dark 30 or The Ripped in dramatic roles.
Yeah, I just saw him in The Rip, yeah.
He's not doing any martial arts. So I would say yeah, if you want to be taken seriously as an action actor, then you've got more to work on, acting as well as action.
Yeah, so really dial in on your acting training, yeah?
Yeah. And also, I mean, this is a bit of a tangent. The Kingsman and the Matrix movies were kind of like a blessing and a curse for our industry because they exposed the West to dramatic actors doing incredible action sequences.
Yeah.
Which was fun. And in The Matrix, I think it was novel. And in Kingsman, it was like, if Colin Firth can do it, anybody can be an action star. And after John Wick, it's almost like, oh, we'll have so-and-so, do a John Wick version. Or Liam Neeson's in his 70s and he's still beating people up. But the fact is, what it's put in the minds of a lot of producers is that we can get a dramatic actor or dramatic actress and make them look like a competent screen fighter. So why should we hire somebody who's grown up doing it? Now, I've got mixed feelings about that, but I would say that's why you need to be a decent actor. And I know some actors who are very good martial artists and they keep it on the down low so they don't get perceived as being just an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tricky industry, and it's part of that snobbery and gatekeeping that we see in the industry. I don't like it, but it is what it is, so it's best to be aware of it.
Yeah, you got to work with it. Be aware of it and work with it. We also discussed showreels. That's a part of marketing and branding, and that's a way to win work. And I know you're passionate. You want to help people with that. Let's give them some Jude Poyer style tips and tricks. First question up is, you've probably seen thousands of stunt reels. What makes you swipe away and stop watching immediately?
I don't think I would turn off immediately. I mean, if someone sends me a 5-minute reel, if it's not grabbed me within the first 45 seconds, I may not stay the course. But what I can say is, if you have a stunt show reel, put something that's going to grab the attention of the person watching it within the first few seconds. I received a show reel from an Australian stunt guy, I think last week, and within the first few seconds there was him doing what was a far from easy high fall onto an airbag. It wasn't from a movie, it was from a training session, but straight away I was like, I knew this guy's got amazing body control and a lot of nerve. And also the fact that he put it at the start of his reel meant maybe he's also got a lot of common sense, and then that kept me going, and I carried on watching it, and there was more of his skills. I think possibly he didn't have a lot of footage from professional projects because maybe he's early in his career and his credits on the projects he has done have been sort of ND stunts, so he'd gone out and shot stuff. There was stuff of him in the training hall tumbling. Again, I could see amazing spatial awareness, great body control, agility, but he also had him fighting, I presume his mates, other stunt mates in the park or in the forest, doing choreography. The days of not having a show reel, there's no excuse. It's too easy these days.
So
back
easy.
in the day, it was VHS tapes and then it was doing it digitally. Now you can shoot something good enough on your phone, edit on your phone, and then send it. It may not get you the job, but it may get you in the room with the stunt team and a chance to audition. With this stunt guy, a lot of the fighting he was doing, he was playing what I would call the hero. He was the one doing the kicks, he was the one doing the hits. So when I replied to his email, I said to him, and not in a nasty way, but I always try to be honest and direct, because that's how I like to be spoken to, and that's how I was spoken to in Hong Kong. It's best not to sugarcoat criticism, I think. I said to him, with your spatial awareness and your agility, I was expecting to see some nasty reactions, what we call in the industry wrecks. And I said, I know stunt people who've been cast on the strength of a wreck in their show reel or a wreck they've done at a casting. And he replied, and again, his mindset was great. He said, thank you so much, that's useful information. Yeah, I should work on that. It's funny, some people don't want that. They'll say, do you mind if I send you my reel, or I've sent you my reel, I hope you don't mind looking at it and telling me what you think. But actually they want you to tell them, you're great, you're amazing, I want to work with you, as opposed to give them what I think is helpful advice. So
it's definitely helpful advice.
A good show reel ideally should show a variety of your skills if you have them. Because again, if you're a good fight person and a good fall person, but you're not the best on horses, but you can at least ride a horse, maybe you should show that. Because let's say there's a project which is going abroad and we need to take 10 people. We know that we can't give you the most difficult horse work, but we know that we can put you on a horse in a scene with horses. Show a variety of skills and show a variety of experience. Yeah, I think that's one to think about.
And then let's get a little bit more granular. Just give me 3 words. What are the 3 things that you believe every stunt show reel must have? Bare minimum 3.
It's going to be more than 3. I think it needs to show a variety of what your experience and what your current competence level is.
So you got to stay current, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. Of course, if you did an amazing stunt 20 years ago and you can't do it now, but it's an amazing stunt, I still want to see it because it tells me where you've come from. Do you know what's really important on a show reel? I'm going to take back what I just said. What's really important is I need to see what you look like.
Okay.
You'd be surprised how many show reels I receive, and I love receiving show reels from people. You know, because maybe they're doing me a big favor because they may be perfect for a job I've got next week and I can't find a double. Some show reels, you don't really get a sense of what the person looks like or what their proportions are or who they are in the scene. So some people, they start their show reel with a static photo of them, maybe a headshot. Even better, a full-length shot where I can see what their proportions are like. And then if they're showing, let's say, a big crowd scene, you know, or a battle scene from Lord of the Rings or, you know, I don't care what it is, Saving Private Ryan, if there's an explosion, maybe just zoom in and highlight who you are in the explosion.
Yeah.
It might sound really obvious, but it can be confusing sometimes.
No, I think that's fantastic advice.
I'm just remembering something that came up a couple of weeks ago. You know, sometimes I will get a lot of submissions, particularly for a casting, if I put out a casting call. The number of stunt people that send me their page or their show reel, and the file name is called showreel or page or 11AWZ3. If you imagine that's going into a folder full of submissions. If your name is John Smith Stuntman, it should say John Smith Stuntman page, you know, as the file name, and then it's easier to find you.
Yeah, so we even take it one step further inside the movie martial arts course. I actually go over this. Here's a little freebie. What we do is we teach actors, performers, stuntmen, whatever, even if I'm submitting to a big company, like for example, if I'm going to shoot a commercial for a big car company, one of the world's biggest car companies, imagine how many other directors or producers or writers or whatever editors are sending in their reels. So what you do is you put your name first, then I go so far as to put the year. So I put Troy Sanford. If I'm sending my show reel to you, I'll put Troy Sanford 2026 action reel. Then, if I know the name of the project, what's your last project you had to look for talent for? The Punisher?
Currently working on an Indian film, but the title's not been announced. So let's call it Indian film.
So if I know the title, I even put the title there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that means you as the action director, you just go over to your search bar on your computer. You say, oh, where's that folder with all the action people? I know Troy put the Punisher on his showreel. The Punisher, boom, you'll find it straight away, right? Yeah. Or you can search for Troy, you'll find it. Or you can search for action reel, and then you'll get like 50 different showreels, and you can quickly, there's Troy. But if we just send it to you as showreel, we're done. That's it.
A lot of people do already do that. They have the name, but also the date of their reel. And that's great. But
that's professional.
You'd be surprised the number of people that don't think to do that. And
I'm
not saying this to bitch and moan. It's more like I want to make it easier for you to get a job, as well as save admin time for, you know, casting people and so on.
Imagine they're casting for the lead role of a new John Wick film. Imagine how many submissions there are going to be. So you have to identify who you are and make it easy for every single level of production to find your video if they need it, right? So that's great advice. Thank you very much. Okay.
Very welcome.
Should stunt performers prioritize, okay, I guess you already answered, showing their recs.
Well, all I'm saying, in the case of that guy, with his skill set, I expected to see recs. And some people, maybe they don't have that same sort of acrobatic ability or spatial awareness, but when they fight, they show themselves just in the hero mode, the one throwing the punches or throwing the kicks. And it's like, if you're a stunt guy, the majority of the time, it's more important being able to sell hits. So if you can do machine gun kicks, of course I want to see it. If you can do a 180-degree side kick, I want to see it. But I also want to see how you react to a right hook or a jump spinning hook kick.
Yeah, we want to see reactions, breakaway stunts, like smashing through glass, maybe jumping out of a roof, smashing onto the top of a car, falling onto concrete, like things that prove you're a tough guy, right?
Yeah, if that's what you can do, you know. And if you're really good in a wire, I don't want to hear about it. I want to see it.
Let's see what you got. Yeah. What's the biggest mistake that people make when trying to impress stunt coordinators? Ooh, that's a big one I can see.
I don't know. I can't speak for all stunt coordinators, and I can only speak for myself. But I would say, just as a general rule in life, is it's important to be honest and it's important to be humble. And I'm not saying I have all the answers and I aced those skills when I was 18. You know, if I impart or share any knowledge about these kind of things, maybe it's because they're lessons I had to learn for myself and I value them, and maybe I'm trying to save people some trouble. I think I've always been quite an honest person, but humility, maybe not so much. But in terms of honesty, don't ever lie about your ability. A stunt coordinator will thank you if you say, I'm sorry, that stunt's not for me, or I think I can do it, but do you mind if I do a rehearsal, or if I work on the skill for a couple of days and send you a tape? They can always say no, or they may go, yeah, this guy's a really good look for the gag that I need. I'm going to give them a couple of days to see if they're comfortable doing it. There are stunt people out there, working stunt people, who lie about what they've done on jobs, or lie about what they're capable of. What you don't want to find as a stunt coordinator is that you've hired someone that says that they can do a 30-foot high fall and they really can't. Chances are I'm going to ask to see video evidence. But with some people, it's like, are you comfortable around fire? And they say yes, and actually they're not, and then they panic. So don't ever lie about your ability, and also don't lie about your achievements. You'd be surprised. There's one guy in the UK, he's actually a coordinator now on the British Stunt Register. A few years ago, maybe more than 10 years ago, I saw his stunt performer reel when he was just performing. I saw action in that reel from a movie that he didn't work on, and I saw stunts in that movie from a movie that he did work on, but I knew he hadn't performed those stunts. It's amazing that people do that. If you do that, or if you make false claims and people find out, hopefully they find out before you get hurt on set. But if you make those claims and you get found out, your reputation's gone.
Yeah.
You know? And some
that's
people,
really bad.
I know there is a mentality in, not just in the film industry, but in the world at large. Some people say fake it till you make it, you know, and there's a lot of actors that say they can ride a horse that can't. When it comes to stunt work, just be truthful and honest, and people will respect you for that.
Yeah, that's crazy that guy made it all the way to stunt coordinator. Yeah. Stolen valor. I was going to get stuck into that. Yeah.
The fact is, the guy has got talent and he's done some really gnarly stunts, legitimately. His character, what does it say about his character? What does that say about how trustworthy he is?
Yeah, indeed. Okay, let's push on to some more career strategy, because this is the good stuff. This is what people really need to hear. You used the term career awareness. So when we talked about career awareness, how is this critical in the stunt world? And what did you mean by that term career awareness?
I'm not talking about having like a definite 5-year, 10-year plan, because I've never had that. But I just think it's important to know what you want to be in this moment and what are the goals that you're working towards. And some people don't have that clarity. Another thing I see is a lot of people want to run before they can walk. And I would say career ignorance. You know, people maybe just start in stunt work, and because they've put together fights with their friends in the park and videoed it, which is good stuff, which you should do, and I wish more people did do it, but because they've done that, they put on their resume fight choreography or fight coordinator. And the ignorance is they don't realize that the skills of a fight choreographer aren't just limited to being able to put movements together. It's about script and character breakdown. It's about knowing how to deal with actors, knowing how to deal with departments. It's about storytelling through action. It's about experience on set. Probably the most valuable skill I have now as a film industry professional is the years of filmmaking experience I have behind me on big budget movies, big budget series, but also soap operas, shitty independent films, Hong Kong movies that were financed by gangsters and shot in 6 days. I learned on each of those different jobs. I learned working in different countries, and experience counts for a lot. It was my experience working on so many movies as a performer that made me feel, okay, I can step into coordinating now. And so many years of stepping up and being a stunt coordinator, feeling I'm comfortable to second unit direct. So that is what I talk about with regards to having clarity of your career, is realizing what the skills are that are required to take those next steps. And it's not about the gram and appearing to be a director or appearing to be a stunt coordinator or a fight coordinator. It's about building your skills. And
so then how does someone move from stunt performer to action designer to stunt coordinator?
I don't think there's necessarily a clear path. There's different routes. In the UK, it seems like on a lot of jobs, like the big movies, The stunt coordinator is more like, they really are a head of department, but it seems like they are more like a general overseeing things, and they don't have so much creative input because there's so many demands, and the riggers are doing the safety and the wiring and the flying and so on, and they will have somebody on their core team who is a fight choreographer and maybe somebody shooting Previs. I don't think, I mean, I'm going on a tangent here, I don't actually think in the UK there's many filmmakers or productions that really understand Previs, so they might hire someone to shoot Previs, but it's more like a really nice proof of concept that doesn't get followed. That's a story for another day. I don't know if I'm in a... Most people don't get the action designer credit in the UK anyway. And I've had to explain to people why I like to be credited as an action designer. I say because I don't just choreograph. I'm involved in the camera placement, the camera movement, the editing, I direct action. So action designer, I think, is something that people like Brad Allen pushed for, so people understood what their role was. Because the job I did in the US last year, I couldn't get the credit as action designer because I don't think DGA, the Directors Guild, recognized that. So I had second unit director, and I did direct second unit. But on some jobs, second unit shoots exteriors of buildings or close-ups of a hand double opening a doorknob. I also got credited as the supervising stunt coordinator, so I was fine. But in the UK, there aren't many people really getting an opportunity to action design. Apart from directors like Gareth and maybe Matthew Vaughan, a lot of jobs, it's still, there's a stunt coordinator. The stunt coordinator has a fight choreographer on their team. Maybe they shoot a Previs, maybe they don't. If they shoot a Previs, maybe it gets followed by the director, maybe it doesn't. And sadly, I think that explains why a lot of the action shot in the UK is a bit meh.
Bland, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get into the process of shooting shot-by-shot Previs out a little bit later in the conversation. I just want to touch upon something quickly. This is going to really help people that are listening to this podcast, especially guys that are in the UK. But hey, why not? Every action guy all around the world. Flood Jude Poyer's inbox. If someone wanted to approach you personally and build a relationship with you, what would be the right way to do that? Can you give us good examples and bad examples?
I don't mind people sending me emails or directly messaging me. I like it. I know some people are shy about doing that. I have had people's profiles, showreels go into my inbox at just the right moment. So for me, knowing who's out there is a good thing. I know there are other people that don't welcome it. A couple of weeks ago, a stunt woman from New Zealand that's based over here said to me, do you think it's okay if I send my, if I contact other coordinators? And my answer was like, there will be coordinators, because she's not on the British register. I said, there will be coordinators that will be super grateful to receive your materials. There will be coordinators that won't touch you regardless of your ability or how you look, just because you're not on the register, but they may forget that in 6 months when they really need you. And then there will be people that will just be pissed off and annoyed that you've had the temerity to contact them, and that's on them. That's to do with their own issues. It's not about you, because she was professional, polite, and she has impressive skills, and she has the materials that any stunt coordinator or action designer worth their salt looks at and goes, okay, this is a professional. They are not wasting my time, So that, I would say, is the right approach, is just contact people and be polite. I mean, don't overdo it, because to me, that's a red flag. That actually speaks of insincerity. If someone really ladles it on, it's like they're trying to appeal to your ego. But if someone's like, look at me, I'm really good, give me a job. I mean, I don't often get that, but I have had people say, can I have feedback on my showreel? Then when I give feedback, and I always try to be constructive and helpful, sometimes it's their reply to that email which tells me more about them than the initial contact.
That's the deciding factor if they get the job or not, yeah? The reply.
Well, maybe not get a job, but look, I like to help people if I can. And if someone sends me their reel and I've got nothing for them, but I think maybe they would be good for so-and-so's project. If we've had a pleasant, professional interaction, I feel comfortable suggesting they contact that coordinator or just forwarding it onto the coordinator myself. There was somebody who tried contacting me several times, and I'd seen some of their stuff on social media, and to be honest, I didn't think it was very good at all. So I tried not to engage with this person, and then I was at an event and they came up and talked to me. And I could see they were actually nervous. And then I felt empathy. So I said, look, email me tomorrow, send me your materials, I'll tell you what I think. And I received their materials. I spent maybe an hour writing an email back to them, giving them what I thought was constructive advice. And they weren't rude in return, but I could tell that they didn't want help. They just wanted me to say, yes, you're amazing, I want to work with you. And from what I can gather, because that was more than a year ago, they are still doing the same thing. Now, it's okay, you don't have to listen to my advice. And I also believe, a bit like if a doctor tells you you've got an injury or an issue, get a second opinion. I'm just sharing my opinion. But yeah, I think some people think they know best, and it's more like they feel that they're doing you a favor. Hopefully, people that want to have a career, I'm not talking about who want to be in 1 or 2 movies, but people that want to have a career in this industry are open to being given useful advice. Maybe sometimes it's a bitter pill to swallow, but it's the sort of good thing to have, you know.
Man, I'm so, when I hear you talk throughout this conversation and our prior conversation, it seems like there's a lot of really rude people out there that can't take soft feedback. Because you're one of the most polite stunt coordinators I've ever spoken to. So whatever feedback you're giving, I'm pretty sure it's nice feedback, no matter how harsh it is.
I wouldn't say I've had a lot of rudeness. I think it's more just like you get the energy where it's like a wall is
bad energy, right?
And that's, bad energy. And you know what? It's okay. And I like to balance things out because I'm a positive person.
Yeah, damn right. I think you're the most reasonable.
No, I mean, I have my moments, and I can be very blunt in a way that would be quite normal in Hong Kong on a film set, but doesn't, people over here aren't used to. I'll give you an example of a positive thing. I met someone very briefly who's just getting into stunts, and she was, maybe is, a high-level ballerina. And she was posting some of her taekwondo training. I could tell this person had real potential for a career. And also they'd been very polite and friendly and professional in our limited conversations. And I messaged her and I said, are you okay to receive some unsolicited advice? And she said, yes, please. And I said, your flexibility is great. I said, but you have got telltale giveaways that you're a dancer doing martial art kicks. Can I tell you how to work on it to make those kicks look more like martial art kicks? And I just explained about turning the hip in, having the knee a little bit lower than the hip, and turning the foot in. She could not have been more receptive, and she wasn't at all defensive. And that was that for that conversation. But she received it with the right energy. And sure enough, I've seen her posting videos over the last few months, and her kicks look like taekwondo kicks, but of someone with amazing flexibility and good control.
Great.
What that tells me, though, is you don't get to be a high-level ballet dancer in that world unless you can take harsh criticism, on the chin and work super hard, and you've got to be driven towards that goal. And I'm sure you've met people that have danced and they throw kicks all their life like they're dancers because they can just about get away with it. But this was someone who's like, I'm a dancer, I want to do stunts, I want to do taekwondo, and they're transferring their skills into taekwondo, but with the right mental attitude as well as the physical work.
Yeah. Perfect. That's nice. That's a positive story. Well, good luck to her and her career. I'm sure with you watching over her, she'll do very well. I want to jump into action design because the craft is important to discuss, and I know you're really passionate about it. Let's talk about action design. What does action design mean to you?
I am passionate about action design. It means a lot to me. I'm quite a easygoing person. I tend to see the glass as half full. I take pleasure in the little things. I think life is much better if you do that. But action design is something I do care deeply about. Now, what is action design? It involves stunt coordination, it involves choreography, but it's more than that. So for me, an action designer is involved in where the camera moves, what speed it's running at, what lens it's on, its shutter angle, and also the editing. It's essentially action directing, but the design period is normally something that happens before shooting, and that's where Previs is the most valuable tool. A lot of people think they do Previs. I don't think they do, because if they did, they would value that Previs more. I would say Brad Allen and Gareth Evans are probably two of very few filmmakers I've worked with who really treat Previs to its full potential. It's during that time where you're in that room with the cardboard box walls and the window made out of glad wrap, That's where you discover the best way to photograph, the best way to edit, and the rhythms to tell the story of your action sequence. When I work with Gareth, and I know Brad did this too, by the time you get to set, you are recreating that previs shot for shot, edit for edit. And why do I say a lot of people do previs but they don't really? It's because they treat it as more like a blocking tape, and yeah, that angle's kind of nice, but let's maybe stay on it for a little bit longer. Well, if you do that, the performance is going to be different, the rhythms are going to be different. Previs is about finding the best angle for those moments, for those techniques. And as you know, movie fighting, especially the kind of heightened stuff that you and I do, it's not realistic. So the way I throw a kick for a camera over here may be actually quite different from over there. Or if I'm going to do some kind of spinning move into a kick, if I know where the edit point is, I may throw that spinning move quite differently for the two different shots.
Indeed,
So I'm a big believer in previs. So for me, an action designer is involved in the choreography and the creation of the previs, but ideally they're involved at the earlier stages. You know, they're looking at the scripts and thinking about not just how people move and the environments, but maybe also influencing how the script changes and saying to the director or the writer, I get that, but have you thought, what if we did this? Or might this service the story better? A lot of filmmakers don't want someone from the stunt world doing that. They kind of think, what the fuck do you know? You know, but
Yeah.
I found others are extremely receptive to that. Action design basically is having an overall vision for the action and then hopefully making it work in a way that when that movie comes out or the show comes out, ideally the audience should not feel the hand of more than one filmmaker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I remember going to see a movie in Hong Kong once, and it wasn't a big budget movie, but it wasn't tiny. The action sequences were quite good, but stylistically they were tonally so different from the rest of the movie. They were a lot more brutal, a lot more violent, and I realized, yeah, that's what I call a schizophrenic product, where the director and the action director haven't had enough time to make sure that the tone is cohesive. You know, so yeah, that to me is what action design is, and previs is such an undervalued tool.
So the word previs doesn't actually exist in the Oxford Dictionary. So
Yeah,
for the audience, can you define what previs is? Because all the action guys watching, we all know what previs is, but for those that are not in the action world, can you tell us what previs is?
I mean, the first time I heard the word pre-visualization, it was referring to sort of low resolution computer generated animations for shots that would be too difficult or awkward to orchestrate. So I think the first time I saw it, because I used to geek out on how movies are made, kind of TV shows, and I think it was like an animation of a car chase, and that was called a pre-visualization.
Yeah.
I don't know when the term previs was first used for films, but I think the first time I saw it was kind of a very simple previs, if you could call it, was Robert Rodriguez on the set of Desperado, and he has a shootout in a bar, and on the DVD extras you saw him with a camcorder finding his shots like the day before. Now maybe that's closer to what nowadays we'd call a blocking tape, but since Robert Rodriguez was the director of the movie, what he was getting with his camcorder reflected very closely what he ended up getting in his multi-million-dollar movie. And then of course with The Matrix, I think that's when previs really sunk in, because The Matrix had Yuen Woo-peng and his team working with the Wachowskis on a major studio movie, and there they were shooting very specific video, low-res versions of the fights, kind of like as a proof of concept, but also a template. And then nowadays, people like Brad Allen, of course he's passed on now, and Gareth Evans just swear by that process. So in the case of working with Gareth, it's normally Gareth, myself, a small stunt team in a gymnasium or a studio, and we build the sets out of cardboard, or we put the location out of cardboard boxes and so on. We don't do one thing after another. It's more of an organic process working with Gareth, but we choreograph the fight, and then he's finding the angles and he's editing it on his laptop in that room, and sometimes we'll try different things. This has happened where once on a Friday we did something, and over the weekend I was thinking we didn't quite do that as well as it could be, and on the Monday morning I was like, can we revisit that? And essentially, in a perfect world, by the time you get to production, you have refined your previs to the point that you know shot for shot, edit for edit what you're going to shoot, and you may shoot a second or more before or after those shots in the timeline, but that's what you follow. I love previs because not only does it result in a better looking sequence with better rhythm, and I think rhythm is something that is not thought about out enough with action sequences. With a previs, you can show maybe the special effects people from what angle the explosion is going to be seen, or where the bullet holes are going to be. You can say to them, in this shootout, we're not going to show the wall over here, that's off camera. We're going to show the guys firing the gun. So don't waste money and time and crew putting bullet hole explosions into that wall. When we're shooting those guys firing the gun, art department are going to go in and just dress the aftermath holes. So it's useful from that. It's useful for visual effects, so they understand where they might have to come in and help us paint out a crash mat or remove a wire. And they may go, okay, you're using a wire for that shot. Just make sure that once you've done the stunt that we get 10 seconds where there's nobody in frame, so we've got that as a background to work off. So previs is great from that side. It's great for scheduling. It's a great knowing where your actor's coming in and where your stunt double's coming in. So I'm a big believer in it, and what I tend to do, what Gareth does. For instance, when I'm working as an action unit director away from Gareth, I will have the previs on my laptop, but I also use a system called Q-Take. So if we're shooting with, let's say, an Arri Alexa or a Red, after each take, a compressed version of that file gets sent to my laptop, and I can start overlaying it on the previs to see if the shots are usable and cutting together. And it's fantastic because that way, sometimes we employ little tricks like whips to hide cuts, or I might shoot a shot at 22 frames instead of 24 just to give it a little bit extra speed. And if I'm editing it, I can go, oh, actually 22 looks a bit too fast. Let's do one at 23. So it takes the guesswork out of it. So if you previs, it costs money for production to hire the people, hire the space. If you edit on set and you shoot specific shots, it's not necessarily faster, but it gets you a better product, because it's very expensive to wait 2 months till they're editing it in the editing studio and finding out, oh dear, this doesn't cut together and we need an extra shot.
Yeah, right. You just answered many of my questions coming up, all in one nice one. So I was going to say, what is the value of editing on set? But I guess we just have it right there, yeah?
I love to edit on set, because you're getting it. And with certain things, because it's funny, a few years ago I was being interviewed. I did this French movie called Farang with Xavier Jeans was the director. He's one of the directors from Gangs of London, and he's a really passionate, he loves cinema and he loves genre. And I was being interviewed about the action design on the film, and the critic said to me something about my style of action, and I said to her, I didn't realize I had one, and she said, no, I can recognize it now. And I had to think about that. And I think if I do have a style, and of course I'm standing on the shoulders of giants like Sammo Hung and John Woo that have inspired me and are so much better than me, but they're the people that inspire me and I learn from. I think my style of action, if I had to give it one adjective, it's dangerous. I like the audience to feel it's dangerous. Even if it's a beautiful martial art fight with very aesthetic movements, I want it to feel like this person is trying to hurt that person. They're not just doing choreography. Part of doing dangerous action, you might think, makes it very dangerous on set. But I'm happy to report that because we follow previs, people like myself, Gareth Evans, and because we also care about the people we work with, it's actually normally very, very safe because we've built in the safeguards into the action design. We have mats that are painted to look like the ground, and we know that we can hide them with a little subtle bit of visual effects or by just carefully placing the camera. And previs is also useful for that. You've got the shot. You don't ask the stunt person to take the hit unnecessarily. And you can also show them, you see how that's cutting together? I can feel that you're not quite, hitting the ground hard enough, or I saw you put your hand down. And that instant feedback, and not just as a playback monitor, but as part of an edited sequence within the context of the previs, is invaluable. And let's say I'm shooting a fight scene which takes 3 days to do. It's great for crew morale at the end of the day, end of shooting day 1, end of shooting day 2, and of course at the end, to sit and watch where we are and what we've achieved and feel it coming together. Yeah, that's great,
isn't it? It's useful
in that way too.
And then I'm sure there's friction on set between the stunt teams or the stunt team department, camera operators and DPs when it comes to shooting action, right? There's always some friction. Oh, it shouldn't be like that. I can shoot the shot quickly. No, I'm the DP. You don't touch my camera. So how do you deal with that?
I'm going to tell a story, and I'm sorry, I have told this story before, but for me it sums up working in Hong Kong cinema. When I was in Hong Kong, I saw Tony Cheng Siu Dong handhold and operate the camera. I saw Corey Yun do the same. I saw Jackie Chan tell the camera operator, go to 22 frames, even though Jackie wasn't the director. There just wasn't that sense of separation. I worked on one movie, it was a low-budget movie, it was shot in 7 days, and an action director came in to shoot a fight scene, and I think it was about 3 in the morning, he turns up, and he was gone by 6 in the morning. It was a very quick fight. There was one move, I think I had to kick somebody who was on a table, and the camera was on a low angle and was meant to sort of accentuate the kick, so the camera had to move at a certain time, and it was all handheld. And after the first take, the camera operator, who was also the director of photography, couldn't get it. And the action director said, oh, let me take it. And he took the camera, got the next take, and as he was handing the camera back to the director of photography, the director of photography, without missing a beat, said to him, you truly are a master. And then we carried on. That director of photography, Choi Song-fai, was a year before or a year later, I think a year before, the second unit director of photography on a little film called Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. He had been the DOP for a movie that won the Oscar for cinematography, and he had no issues handing the camera over to the action choreographer. I hate to say, in the UK, normally the less experience they have in the industry doing action, the more precious the directors of photography and camera people are about letting action people operate or tell them how to shoot action. And I'm sorry, that's just about insecurity. That's just about ego. We should be collaborative. I can't talk an awful lot about the Punisher project because I'm under NDA, so I can only say what's already out there. The director was a wonderful director called Ronaldo Marcus Green. I call him Ray. He directed Bob Marley, One Love. He's directed an Oscar-winning movie. The director of photography, Robert Elswit, is one of the best cinematographers in the world. He was more supportive of me in trying to recreate the shots that were in my Previs than some British DOPs have been on low-budget independent films.
Yeah, it's egotistical, I would also say it's somewhat cultural. So the Chinese, whether they are southern, like Guangdong area, Hong Kong, or whether they are mainland Chinese, when I am on set working in China, or when I'm in studio, or when I'm doing something not related to the film industry, the Chinese operate very different to any other culture. They have different departments, they have hierarchy, but one thing that I can say does not exist in the West, but absolutely exists in China, and it's the same in Hong Kong, is that they want to get the mission done, and they don't care to share workload between departments or between hierarchy or between systems. Okay, you can do it. Okay, you do it. Just do it. They don't care. This is the mentality, and it gets things done quick. Maybe
it does.
There might be a reduction of quality sometimes, and maybe things are a little bit dangerous, but you get the job done quick. And when it's done right, you end up with things like, well, the director of photography from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon handing over the camera happily, right? So
yeah,
that's a cultural thing too.
I understand sometimes it can go too far the other way. So sometimes you don't want to take somebody else's job.
Yes, exactly.
So that can be born out of a union mentality. And I'm not anti-union. I think unions can be there for a good reason. They protect people's work. But sometimes unions are about keeping people out. When it comes to doing something specific, not every camera operator can capture action. Not every camera operator has that eye or has that instinct. But other camera operators can compose beautiful shots or a lot of mood and emotion. And it's just about knowing what you're good at and what's in the best interests of the film. In the same way, you get some actors that don't want to be stunt doubled at all. Normally, if they don't want to be doubled at all, it's not about what's in the interests of the film. It's about what's in the interests of their ego. Because perhaps a stunt double doubling you actually will convey the character better than if you did it. You know? And I found, again, a bit like often the more experienced and worldly and more talented and secure the person is, the more comfortable and open they are. So that can be the case with cinematographers, but also it can be with actors. You know, when I worked with David Bautista, he did as much action as we wanted him to do, but he was happy for Rob de Groot, his stunt double, to do stuff.
Good
and
man.
we were going to have a fire stunt in the movie, and Dave said, "Oh, I don't like that fire." And Chris Webb, who works with me a lot, said, "But you were on Fire Inspector." And he said, "Nah, fuck that. That was Rob." And he was happy to give credit to Rob because Dave is not insecure in his masculinity or in his toughness, because
Dave's
he
a
can
proper
fight
man.
and he's wrestled. Exactly.
Yeah, he's a tough guy, yeah. Working with great directors, you're talking a lot about Gareth Evans. Obviously, you have a really close relationship with him. What makes him a special director for action?
I'm very fortunate that Gareth isn't just a filmmaker I admire, but he's also a wonderful human being, a great collaborator. He's very generous in spirit. He puts his ego to one side when we work. We have this system which is about best idea wins, and he's very open to suggestions. He knows best, but he's open to ideas, whether it's from me, whether it's from my stunt team. And he's become one of my closest friends. And I'm not somebody that tries to foster or cultivate friendships with the people I work with. If it happens organically and naturally, that's great, but I don't make friendships in order to help my career. There are people that I work with multiple times. We don't socialize. It's two different good relationships, but Gareth's become a friend. What makes him a great director? I actually think Gareth is a genius, and I don't say that about a lot of people. He's obviously very, very cine literate, and he's absorbed a lot of influences. You know, he loves Hong Kong cinema, he loves certain Japanese cinema, and a lot of eclectic directors and films from all kinds of different times. So he's soaked that up, and that makes him know about the rhythms of action and where best to place the camera. He's not just about recreating what he's seen, but he's found his own flavour and his own spin on it. So The Raid felt like something new, and I don't think it was just because it was Silat. We could see the Jackie Chan influence, but it was what Gareth did with the camera and the way he edited it and the sort of punctuation marks he puts in his action. And then what I think really sets Gareth apart as a director, if I had to choose one thing, is he's a director who cares about character and story and emotion. He's not just satisfied with doing another action scene for the sake of it. I don't want to speak on his behalf, but I think the projects that appeal to him or speak to him are the ones where he cares about the characters, or he's interested in the characters, or he believes the characters, and he gets to create a world. They're not just stunt shows. And I think it's funny because a lot of people try to do what I would call the Raid style of action, but without really understanding what it is. And it's not about repeatedly bashing someone's head into the wall. There's a lot more to it than that. There's emotion, and there's an understanding of geography, there's dramatic stakes all intertwined within these sequences. And that's why most of the time he's not working with martial artists, he's working with actors, because he wants the dramatic emotional to be strong, not just the action.
Well, we're going to have fun when he comes on the podcast and we talk about all that in detail, aren't we?
I think so.
Here's an interesting one. We're coming towards the end. You once compared martial arts to alcohol. Can you explain that to the audience?
I regret telling you that, because it's such a weird music.
It's such a weird thing to say.
I think when I was a kid, I had this kind of romanticized, idealized vision of what martial arts are and what they can do for a person, because I was growing up watching kung fu movies. Although it wasn't a big influence on me, movies like The Karate Kid, where the message was always martial arts is for good and it's to defend, you should be a moral person. And I thought, oh, if you study martial arts, you're not going to grow up and be a dickhead. And unfortunately, I've met people who have trained martial arts for years and they know how to fight, and they are dickheads, they are bullies, and it's almost like they learnt the martial aspect but not the spiritual aspect. And maybe that's about them, maybe it's got something to do with who their coaches are. And it reminds me of alcohol, because if you get somebody a little bit tipsy, what it tends to do is not transform them, but just enhance or exaggerate who they really are underneath. So I think martial art practice, while it can, when it's been done well, be life-changing and character building, I think it can also reveal who a person is. I don't often quote Shakespeare, I may be British and I'm going to get it wrong, but one of my favourite lines of Shakespeare is in the play, I think it's Measure for Measure. And it's something like, it is a wondrous thing to have a giant's strength, but terrible to use it like a giant. And you'll find that I've met them, and I'm sure you've met them, some very legit, dangerous people are often the kindest, softest, and most gentle. Those are the true martial artists. And then you also have people that train.
Yeah, trying to look good and hurt.
Yeah.
You have a movie coming out soon, or dare I say movie. Do we call it a movie? We call it an episode, right? The new Punisher special that's coming.
It's called a special presentation. It's like a one-off. And again, I can't say anything that's not already out in the public eye because I don't want to get in trouble and I don't want to upset anybody that's looking forward to it. But yes, it's a one-off Punisher special starring and written by Jon Bernthal, who wrote it with Ronaldo Marcus Green, who's a fantastic director, directed King Richard. I remember when I got approached about that, I was excited, and superhero genre isn't something that normally speaks to me. I would rather watch, in Cantonese they call Mohap Pin, I think it's Wuxia in Mandarin. You know, movies
Wuxia.
like Jewel to the, I'll let you pronounce it, you're the Mandarin speaker, Mohap. Those movies
very good.
like
No,
Jewel
it's
to
good.
the...
It's good.
No, I'm teasing. Those movies like Duel to the Death, where people are flying around and fighting with swords, that for me is an exciting superhero film rather than some kind of CGI mush. But I've always liked the character of the Punisher. And also, people have asked me over the years, have you ever wanted to go to Hollywood and work in America? I've never felt any affinity. For some reason, I've always felt some affinity with New York. And also, Jon Bernthal is an actor I've found very interesting from listening to him on podcasts. And
He's cool, man. Yeah,
so,
he's cool.
When this project came up, it really felt like I'm supposed to do this one. Now, I know it may sound crazy, and I'm not somebody that believes everything happens for a reason. Carl Jung talked about the importance of recognizing coincidences and synchronicities, and he saw value in that. When The Punisher came along, I felt something inside, like I'm meant to do this, and if it happens, it's meant to be. It wasn't an easy shoot. We didn't have as much time as I would have liked, but it was such a wonderful experience in terms of the New York crew, working with Robert Elswit, who's an incredible director of photography. I'm going to the cinema next week to watch Boogie Nights again, and you know, that's a movie that he shot, and I'm working with him and Jon Bernthal in New York, and with an incredible eclectic American stunt team who were just some of the most giving and generous people. And you know, that's one thing, speaking very personally, that I love about this industry is, of course I want to do good work and I want people to be entertained by the work that I do, but ultimately the work that I do, it's content. The value you put on it is in the eye of the viewer, but the experiences you can have making those things, the friendships you can form, the bonds you can form, that's one of the aspects of this job that I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, me too. Those are the beautiful parts of our job, yeah. That's beautiful. And I didn't know you were a fan of Carl Jung. I'm also a Jungian. So, yeah, nice. Nice to know you're in there. I have a section, I don't know if you want to do it, but it's going to be fun. You got to give short, sharp sentences. So whatever comes to your mind, you just got to say it. Okay. Rapid fire question. I've only got 4 or 5. It's not much. All right.
Okay.
What is the best stunt advice you ever received in your life?
Can I give you somebody else's advice?
Okay, go for it.
It wasn't given to me, but this is a good story.
How very Jungian of you.
There was a very experienced Hong Kong action designer working on a Hollywood movie. I won't say his name to protect him, but he's very legit, very experienced. And the lead actor's stunt double, who is an American stunt double, started to tell him how he thought it should be done. And in Cantonese, there's a proverb or wise saying, and it's Mo Gao Le Lo Dao Dim Diu, and that means don't teach your father how to fuck.
All right.
So bear that in mind.
That's a very good piece of advice.
Don't try to teach your father how to fuck.
Yeah. Wow. My God. Yeah. That's everyone's thinking about doing that right now. That's crazy. Yeah. Don't do that, actors.
Don't do that. Don't do that, actors. Okay. Don't do that, stunt people.
All right. Moving on.
I knew that would throw you.
Yeah, that got me, man. That got me. I think it just got everybody. Wow. Okay. One thing young stunt performers must understand.
The importance of patience.
Nice. Beautiful. One trait every great action performer has.
Camera awareness.
One thing the film industry still gets wrong about stunt work today.
That stunt people can be storytellers.
That is perfect, sir. Thank you for that. Beautiful. I think every action guy out there right now is your biggest fan. Perfect. Thank you for that.
Sorry for that.
Closing question for today. After everything you've experienced in the industry, if a young stunt performer asked you for one piece of advice, and you could only give them one, what could it be that would have the biggest impact on their career? What would you tell them?
This isn't succinct, but this is something I've seen lacking in a lot of people that go into the stunt industry, sadly, is they are not educated or they haven't exposed themselves to this rich history of action cinema and filmmaking that comes before us. And I think it's important to study or absorb the greats, Jackie Chan, John Woo, Sergio Leone, Peckinpah. I could keep going on, all the way back to Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin. I think it's important to do that. You don't have to love those films. You don't have to want to rewatch all of them. But see what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what looks dated. See how things have progressed. I think Die Hard is one of the best action movies ever made. It's near perfect. Storytelling, character, geography, tone. The hand-to-hand fights are shit. It was made in 1987. 1987, Sammo Hung made a movie called Eastern Condors. Die Hard is probably a better movie as a whole, but why is it the fights in Eastern Condors are so much better? What is it about their way of filmmaking back then that made it possible to do that, while Die Hard hadn't managed to do that? So that would be the advice I would give. If you're serious about being a stunt performer, study action, and keep studying action.
Beautiful. Mr. Poyer, I want to say I think you're very unique. You're one of the most unique stunt coordinators I've ever met and I had the gift and the chance to communicate with. I love to meet other stunt coordinators out there. All stunt coordinators are like executive managers. Yeah, they have to be master of people. They have to be master of relationships. They have to understand and master the responsibilities of all departments on set. Action design is no small task. But you, sir, are an extremely deep thinker, and obviously you are a philosopher, having quoted Carl Jung. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor. I hope that many, not just action guys out there, but actors, and I hope people not even in the film industry can watch this episode, because I think there's a lot to learn about being just a bloody good human being in this episode. So again, it's been a real pleasure and an honor. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you, Troy. And I have to say that your words are very, very kind and generous, but I have to say that I have a lot of shortcomings as a filmmaker and on set. I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by really good people who have my back and make up for my shortcomings. So it's important, wherever possible, to surround yourself with good people that you creatively can vibe with, and also that keep you in check and don't let you act out.
Yeah, bloody wonderful. Still dropping gems, even after the podcast is finished.
What do I know?
Mr. Poyer, we'll catch you in the next one, sir.
Thank you.